Back at it again. RIC in the place to be. Ric Serritella here on this Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. It is our 17th episode here on the All Access Football Daily Show. We're feeling really good. The NFL season rolls on. College football action is heating up. We're going to get in some CFL talk later this week with our good friend Bo Marchant, who will join the show on Friday. And don't forget about tomorrow. We've got Thursday night football. Will it be the last game of Mikey McDaniel's Dolphins head coaching career? We might highlight and preview that a little bit later in the show today, as a matter of fact, because our good friend Howard Balzer will be joining us at 10:40 a.m. Eastern, like he does each and every Wednesday here on the All Access Football Daily Show. It's your home for real football talk, and we've got a lot to get to today. Later on in the show, we're going to take a look at the latest Heisman Trophy odds. Earlier in the week, we talked about some head coaches receiving some pink slips. Could a couple of others be coming in the mail? We shall see. We'll talk some college football in the B block, but we're going to start with the NFL news and notes. And just a quick reminder, I've been doing the Sports Rage podcast show for like the last 5 years or so with my good friend Gabriel Morency. Check him out on Twitter at Sports Rage, and we're all over the place wherever you can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and really enjoy chopping it up with Gabe, who's out there in Vancouver. So we always talk some CFL if you like that kind of thing. But yesterday we talked about NFL Rookie of the Year candidates. We also broke down some of the latest news and notes, a little bit of a deeper dive. But here we give you the general overview of the football universe on the All Access Football Daily Show. So buckle up. Hunker down. Thank you for welcoming me into your monitor wherever you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Hey, buckle up. Smash that like button while you're here. We appreciate all the love and support. And boy, oh boy, Minnesota, I was expecting big things from the Vikings. I thought, J.J. McCarthy was going to come in and do some damage with Kevin O'Connell. And we talked about the J.J. McCarthy ankle injury on yesterday's show with our good friend Josh Alper, who was ever so kind to join us from Pro Football Talk. But more bad news for those Minnesota Vikings now, because Aaron Jones, the running back in the backfield, now down another man, because Aaron Jones is going to miss at least 4 games, maybe longer, according to reports. And that's because he suffered a major hamstring injury, this past week. Now, we saw Jordan Mason really assume a heavy role, the offseason acquisition there, as the 1-2 punch. Jordan Mason now will be that feature running back, and they're going to have to lean on him a lot since Carson Wentz will be starting for the Minnesota Vikings. But they did bring back Cam Akers yesterday, so Minnesota turning the bottom of that roster, trying to create some depth with Jordan Mason now scheduled to receive the bulk of the workload in the backfield. Cam Akers brought on board as an insurance policy, and he's been with the Vikings before, so he should know the offense there. But, yesterday we mentioned Carson Wentz getting the start for the Minnesota Vikings. Undrafted free agent Max Brosmer still on the practice squad, I believe, and he's not going anywhere. They have big plans for him, but being an undrafted rookie free agent out of Minnesota, probably not feeling comfortable about having him as the number 2 going into Sunday, at least. So they have signed Desmond Ridder. Remember me? The former Cincinnati Bearcats quarterback who was selected by the Atlanta Falcons, I believe in the 4th round, was it? Had a few starts in the National Football League. So he at least brings some experience in terms of bullets flying and preparation and knowing what to expect, because now Desmond Ridder just one play away should something happen to Carson Wentz. And I shared my sentiments on Wentz. Philadelphia handed him that fat sack of cash, and Wentz just completely checked out, stopped preparing, stopped studying the playbook. He was out in the woods duck hunting somewhere. So we'll see how much love, dedication, and passion Carson Wentz still has to be a National Football League quarterback. Now, I've got so much love and passion and dedication for this great game of football. That's why I'm here with you each and every day, 7 days a week, no days off. And I hope my love and passion shines through because I love being here with you each and every day, chopping it up, talking pigskin. It's what we do here on the All Access Football Show. So buckle up. That's your Minnesota Vikings report. And keep an eye on Max Brosmer, though, because if this Carson Wentz experiment does not work, Desmond Ridder, we know who he is. And Max Brosmer, I don't think the season is going to go sideways on the Vikings, but I don't think now that they're going to be in contention for this NFC North division. And the other thing to keep in mind here that I have in my notes, it's pretty interesting here because Minnesota now is the first team in NFL history to have two international games in the same season. Not only are they in the same season, but they're on back-to-back consecutive weeks. And so when you think about the J.J. McCarthy rehab process, there's a very good chance McCarthy does not travel with the team. So does this hinder his development? He'll no longer be with the team on a day-to-day basis because they'll be going out to Dublin for the first ever game in Ireland. That game is going to be October 5th. I'm sorry, that game is going to be September 28th against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dublin. And then the following week, they go over to London, England to play the Cleveland Browns on October 5th. So I don't think it's going to make sense for J.J. McCarthy to travel with the team. He's going to have to stay behind and rehab. He's got that ankle injury, is expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks. And this week they're going to play week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. And we talked about the Cincinnati Bengals have their own quarterback woes. I mean, who had this game circled on their calendar at the beginning of the season? If you did, you probably weren't anticipating the Carson Wentz, Jake Browning showdown scheduled for the NFL Week 3 slate. But here we are. And the Bengals seem pretty content with moving forward with Jake Browning. From one JB to another, they go from Joe Burrow to Jake Browning. Burrow, I don't anticipate to see him for the rest of the season. This is a lost cause for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's a shame because they did get out to a 2-0 start after not qualifying for the playoffs last year. So now Cincinnati, we had some breaking news on the show yesterday because Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk was here and delivered the news right on the spot. Mike White, Sean Clifford, now signed to the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad. Brett Rippon elevated from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. So here we are with Brett Rippon, okay, the nephew of Mark Rippon. He is now one play away with the Cincinnati Bengals, okay? So some updates there as the QB carousel continues to turn in the National Football League. And we've got some other, news and notes to get to here. Sticking with the quarterbacks, okay, suddenly Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders, based on Dan Quinn's comments yesterday, it seems unlikely now that Daniels is going to play this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, he's got a left knee sprain. He did undergo some MRI testing, and there's no major structural damage there for Jaden Daniels, but his status is looking doubtful. It would be his first missed game of his entire career. Pretty good considering the physicality, the running style, the hits he absorbs. But Dan Quinn basically saying it's a day-to-day situation. They'll continue to monitor that. We'll continue to monitor that. And if he can't go, well, another one of those former top quarterbacks circulating around the league, Marcus Mariota, will get the start here in week 3, possibly against his former team, the Las Vegas Raiders. So you got the revenge match. Jake Browning, by the way, actually began on the Minnesota Vikings practice squad. So he's going to have a little bit of payback on his mind in that matchup. I'm sure Marcus Mariota, who I think during his time with the Raiders, didn't he just like suddenly get up and depart and leave the organization? Anyway, he was the backup last year, I believe, in Washington. Didn't really see any field action, but he is on deck, on tap, slated to start here in week 3 against the Las Vegas Raiders should Jaden Daniels be unable to go. All right. And now this is not a very serious injury, but just a little tidbit of information you might be curious about in tomorrow's Thursday night football matchup. Josh Allen, who you may have seen with that bloodied nose against the New York Jets, well, he uh, could be wearing a visor now on the Thursday night football matchup. I don't really expect this to have significant impact, but if it's, a player that's not used to wearing that visor, I would think that he's going to have to try to get a practice session in today with that visor just to get adapted to the different types of vision there that it could cause. But I think the more important storyline, and we teased it in the open, is Mike McDaniel, who just sounded like a defeated man this week in his press conference. He looks like a dead man walking. And this game has the makings of a blowout. They blew out the Jets 30-10, I think it was. This game could be uglier. You saw the Lions put up a 50 burger on the Chicago Bears. It could be that kind of beatdown tomorrow night in Buffalo. So if we have time with Howard Balzer, there's a lot to cover. We'll maybe pick his brain on that matchup. The future of Mike McDaniel. Could John Gruden be in the fold? Who will they look to? Who will they turn to? Some interesting developments there. Hey, by the way, Scouting the League podcast with Neil Stratton and Roderick David, if you go to allaccessfootball.com, they actually took a deep dive into some of the NFL hot seats, some of the latest head coaching hiring trends that they've noticed around the league throughout the last couple of hiring cycles. So if you're looking for some insider analysis from two people who have their finger on the pulse, I mean, Neil Stratton's as tapped in as anybody we know. Of course, Roderick David, the former Atlanta Falcons scout. Check them out, Scouting the League podcast. They have a great interview with Fran Duffy, NFL draft analyst, breaking down cornerbacks as well. But hey, the injury news keeps on rolling around. And, we talked about it yesterday. Again, Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk was on the show. We're isolating all of our interviews now on the YouTube channel. So if you missed out on that, a lot of good information. But we did touch base upon Kalijah Kancey and his injury in that Monday Night Football matchup between the Buccaneers and Texans. And the Bucs, man, next man up, right? Like, this is a busted, bruised, and battered ball club, but all they do is find a way to pull out victories. Baker Mayfield with the late game heroics in back-to-back weeks here. But Kalijah Kancey, this is terrible. Torn pectoral, out for the season. First-round pick from 2023. Him and Vita Vea, a big-time force up the middle in that Tampa Bay defensive line. We talked about 7 different Bucs players applied pressure, QB pressure in that game against CJ Stroud. Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea being the main cast of characters. But, head coach Todd Bowles pretty much indicated it's going to be a committee approach to try to replace Kalijah Kancey next to that void now to Vita Vea, who arguably the best run stuffer in all of the National Football League. But he did mention Greg Gaines, the rookie Elijah Roberts out of SMU. I think he was a 5th-round pick. Logan Hall, Adam Gotsis, CJ Brewer, all names mentioned by Todd Bowles during his press conference in terms of how they're going to replace. And you don't really replace a guy like Kalijah Kancey. You just hope that somebody can step up, fill those shoes. And, Tampa Bay, we mentioned Luke Godecki. He re-aggravated that foot injury against Houston. Now he's expected to miss several weeks, as is Tristan Wirfs, who's out for about at least another month, as is wide receiver Chris Godwin. So the Bucs are not just down players, they're down marquee players. And, one thing I talked about on the Sports Rage podcast yesterday, we got into the NFL Rookie of the Year candidates. Emeka Egbuka, is going to have a large role in this Tampa Bay Bucs offense. To me, he is the leading candidate for the NFL Rookie of the Year, and I think the odds indicate that, because he is now the top leading candidate to win that NFL Rookie of the Year, and the Bucs are going to need him. And if they can hold on and they can survive, and I do think they will still win this NFC South, possibly host a playoff game. I mean, the Bucs, in terms of, as far as I'm concerned, right up there with the Eagles, right up there with the LA Rams. I posted the world famous All Access Football Report up this morning on the website. has our NFL power rankings, CFL power rankings, our NCAA power rankings, every professional football league across the world power rankings. So check that out. If we have time in the show, I'll try to get through some of those power rankings, but there's a lot to get to. So stay where you are because I'm not done yet here in the A block. We mentioned the NFC North, and the Green Bay Packers have jumped out in front with the early lead. But now they, too, have been somewhat bit by the injury bug early on here in the NFL season. The injury bug is out to bite and snatch and hurt, man. Jayden Reed, he underwent collarbone and foot surgery, 2 different injuries. He's expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks now. Of course, Christian Watson, already injured. He is not, with the ACL injury, he is not expected to resume practice until after the week 6, after the bye week in week 6. So Christian Watson's still a month away from even to begin practicing. Jayden Reed now out 6 to 8 weeks. What does that mean? Well, rookie Matthew Golden, he's going to have to step his game up, maybe put some stickum on those hands with those deep balls sliding through his fingertips now. The opportunities have been down there deep downfield for Golden. They just need to execute, but they still have Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks. They also drafted Savion Williams, all young, up-and-coming wide receivers. So we'll see who emerges from that Packers wide receiver corps. But, hey, I saw Tucker Kraft is, like, having the most efficient tight end season of all tight ends in terms of production, targets, execution. And I really like Luke Musgrave there with their 12 personnel package. So the Packers do have weapons. And let's not forget about those Detroit Lions, who we mentioned put that 50 burger on Chicago. Hey, did you catch the end of the game handshake between Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, by the way? Does anybody really like this guy, Ben Johnson? I'm curious to know. Drop us a line in the chat room. We haven't been able to heat up this chat room much here on the All Access Football Daily Show, but we love to get interactive. We love your feedback. We love your questions. Do you guys really like this Ben Johnson character? I don't think it was a good move for the Chicago Bears. I guess only time will tell, but that is your NFL news and update report. In fact, I've got a whole nother page of news and notes that I want to get to, but we're going to have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears over to the college football side. A lot of interesting develops yesterday on the college football landscape. So don't go anywhere. Maybe take a bathroom break, catch yourself a drink, and we'll be back right after this brief message. Hey, RIC and a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report, published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, or subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off. Rain, sleet, hail, snow, the show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right, back at it again. RIC and a place to be. Ric Serritella chopping it up, breaking it down, bringing you the names you need to know when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin. It's what we do each and every day here on the All Access Football Daily Show. It's your home for real football talk. Let's get loose with it. Let's get relaxed. Let's kick our feet up and enjoy the sounds of the news and notes of the world of football. Buckle up, baby. We're back at it again here on this Wednesday, September 17th. Hopefully you're enjoying your hump day. For those of you who are looking forward to the weekend, we're going to hump our way into the B block here. And we went around the league in the A block with NFL injury updates. Got a lot of NFL news and notes. I'll try to sneak them in as much as we can. Coming up in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to have the legendary Howard Balzer covering the National Football League for 50 years, of course, a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, and Cardinals Wire. We'll get to him at 10:40 a.m. Eastern, but I want to turn our attention over to the college football landscape because, we mentioned on yesterday's show, or was it Tuesday's show or Monday's show? I think it's all bleeding into one. That's what happens when you're live 7 days a week. But we talked about the pink slip served up in Virginia Tech, UCLA, now looking for new head coaches. We talked about Bobby Chesney, who's down there at James Madison University, formerly of Holy Cross, being a candidate now for Virginia Tech. An interesting development yesterday. Another name popped up as a potential head coach candidate at Virginia Tech. In fact, a former alumni there and currently the head coach over at Norfolk State, who just earned their first victory last week. But Mike Vick, how about that? Being rumored as the potential next Virginia Tech head coach. Boy, would that create a buzz. And we talked about Florida, Billy Napier. He's on the hot seat. Whether it's the Dolphins or the Gators, could John Gruden be in play for the state of Florida? Could get interesting. However, yesterday we had another head coach maybe feeling the heat, feeling the burn down there in Clemson, Dabo Swinney. My God. Woo! Did you guys catch this rant yesterday? My God. I believe it was a 54-minute press conference where Dabo just went on a tirade. And if you were on our show last Friday, our good friend Brooks Austin, the film guy, he actually clipped the highlights, I guess, or the lowlights of that Dabo Swinney press conference. You can find him over at Brooks Austin on Twitter. And he did a great job of condensing 54 minutes into about 54 seconds. But Dabo basically saying, hey, he hears the noise. If Clemson's tired of winning, because that's all we do here, then send me on my way. He was pretty clear about it. Said, hey, I'll go elsewhere. Heck, I'm 55. I ain't going to the beach. So Dabo feeling the heat, man. And, a lot of this is on Dabo himself because he's been really reluctant to adapt to the NIL rules. The first couple years, he did not take anybody from the portal. Now, the last year or two, he's loosened that up, and you could probably count on one hand how many guys he's actually taken from the transfer portal, but he just doesn't believe in it. He just believes in developing his own players, developing players that want to be at Clemson. And I got news for you, Dabo. Here's a news flash. That's a recipe for failure in today's college football. So you need to adapt and adjust and evolve with the times, or otherwise you will be on that firing line. Because hey, 1 and 2, you guys had championship expectations coming into the season, and I'll tell you what, Syracuse is no gimme this week. Fran Brown is bringing the heat with my guy Steve Angeli, the pride of Don Bosco Prep, New Jersey high school state champion. He's now taking the reins there. He's playing very well for the Syracuse Orangemen. This is a team with a chip on its shoulder. Maybe Dabo has a chip on his shoulder too, but this is going to be a heck of a matchup. It's a game I have circled on the calendar. We'll talk more about it on Saturday's college football pregame show with veteran scout Russ Landy, like we do each and every Saturday during our college football pregame show, highlighting the marquee matchups, key prospects, names you need to know for the upcoming 2026 NFL draft. Speaking of NIL, by the way, did you see the story on Diego Pavia down in Vanderbilt? He is now, I was down in Vanderbilt for my training camp tour, and while the school did not confirm it, I have sources that I trust that tell me like Diego Pavia's NIL deal this year is north of $2 million, believe it or not. And he delivered in a big time last week, didn't he? Pounced South Carolina, I think, what was it, 31-9? But Vanderbilt, now the quarterback, Diego Pavia, he comes in at about just under 5'10", so he's not really much of a candidate for the NFL in terms of being a prospect, and he probably realizes that. But now he's going to put his NIL money to good use because he's now suing the NCAA to file an appeal for a 7th year of eligibility. Okay. And, this is where, like, what's the next domino to fall? Like, where does it end? With this NIL transfer portal, it's basically professional football when you got guys hanging out making $2 million and probably not going to get drafted. Well, yeah, I understand why you probably want to collect another $2 million paycheck, Diego. But hey, 7 years, really? And, this is a byproduct that stems back from the COVID pandemic in 2020, all those players receiving an extra year of eligibility. Where do we draw the line? Where does it stop? I mean, enough is enough. 7 years of college eligibility? My gosh. All right. Well, I wanted to sneak that note in just because we talked about Dabo and the NIL, but sticking to the head coach theme, how about Marcus Freeman? Notre Dame 0-2. They fall to number 24 in the rankings after their national championship appearance, and they have Purdue on deck this Saturday. And, they did lose defensive coordinator Al Golden to the Cincinnati Bengals during the offseason. And we talked about that Bengals defense with Josh Alper on yesterday's show from Pro Football Talk. But the guy who replaced him now, somebody I know very well, and Chris Ash, who I'm not a big fan on. Now, he's been around the block, lots of experience, Ohio State, obviously the head coach at Rutgers. He was down there at Texas for a little while. So he's seen a lot. He's been around a lot, but my beef with Chris Ash stems during his time as the head coach of the Rutgers football team. The first thing this guy did was remove all the nostalgia, all the history from the hallways of the football facility, which made zero sense to me because Piscataway is the birthplace of college football, the birthplace of football. I mean, and Chris Ash just took away all the history. This guy needed a GPS to go find Don Bosco Prep and Ramapo. And I mean, this guy was not from New Jersey, and he was in way over his head. Now, he's the defensive coordinator over at Notre Dame, stepping in the role of Al Golden. And Marcus Freeman, I don't think, likes what he's saying. So Freeman yesterday saying he's going to take an increased role on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, a specialty of his previously being at Ohio State. This Chris Ash, though, I don't really trust him. And while Freeman said he's not going to take away the play calling duties just yet, another stinker against Purdue, and that transition is just bound to happen. So just another development that we'll continue to monitor here. And, explosive plays they've been giving up all over the place. However, Notre Dame can put some points on the board. They have yet to get Jeremiah Love, the love train, rolling. Jadarian Price has actually kind of stolen some of that thunder in that 1-2 backfield punch. And they've got some talented wideouts too. And Malachi Fields, somebody we highlighted in the scout notebook on Monday over at allaccessfootball.com. Jaden Greathouse, who I'm a big fan of. He saw him making big plays in that national championship game last year. But an interesting thing, which leads us into our next topic, is the Heisman Trophy odds. Jeremiah Love actually was one of the leading candidates coming into the season for that Heisman Trophy. He currently sits at plus 6,000. So $100 to win 6,000 if you think Jeremiah Love can have a bounce back year here. But I do have the latest, most up-to-date current Heisman Trophy odds, courtesy of BetMGM, who's not an official sponsor, but hey, we are looking for a wagering sponsor. If you're out there and want to support the show, hey, I'm not hard to find. RIC at allaccessfootball.com. John Mateer, how about that? The Oklahoma quarterback has shot up now and is the number 2 leading contender to win the Heisman Trophy. Dual threat signal caller has been really playing at a very high level, and he's at plus 850 right now as the number 2 leading contender to win the Heisman Trophy. Number 1 might surprise you. It's old friend Carson Beck from the Miami Hurricanes. Makes sense to me. Miami is stunning and gunning. Beck looks poised. He looks dangerous. He is now the leading candidate to win the Heisman Trophy. But check this out. The odds are at plus 700. Pretty good, man, for the leading odds getter in the Heisman Trophy race. So 100 to win 700. And according to the ESPN data now, the last time that there's been such a long shot as the leading Heisman Trophy contender in terms of odds, you got to go and entering week 4, you got to go all the way back to 2012 to get such great odds on the Heisman favorite. And that would have been Leonard Fournette in week 4 of the 2012 college football season. He was at plus 500. So Carson Beck now at plus 700. Pretty interesting. Some other news and notes in terms of the Heisman race. Arch Manning was one of the preseason favorites at plus 650. He's now at plus 3,000. So if you got some faith in good old Arch there, there's a enticing money line there to be had. And then, today I published the All Access Football Report, and we touched on the injuries to Doug Nussmeier, Lenora Sellers, the LSU and South Carolina quarterbacks. Nussmeier is going to play, according to Coach Kelly, and he'll maybe take the bye week off in a couple weeks here. That first week of October, they said Nussmeier is going to shut it down, and he's suffering from a torso injury from too much throwing during the preseason. He's also had a knee injury flare up on him. So a big reason why LSU is ranked dead last in scoring in the SEC, only 20 points per game. So Nussmeier now sitting at plus 1,300. Sellers has dropped from plus 1,400 to plus 5,000. And, of course, you saw the vicious hit he took on Saturday. He's in the concussion protocol. But South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer, very elusive with providing any updates there. However, SEC mandates all teams to have their first injury report of the week by tonight, Wednesday. So we'll get an update on Lenora Sellers probably later on this day. And then a couple of value plays if you're looking for some great value. How about Dante Moore out of Oregon? I think this kid has an outstanding shot to win the Heisman Trophy, and you can get him right now at plus 1,300. Pretty good. And if you want a non-quarterback contender, look no further than Jeremiah Smith, who I feel has a very strong chance to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2027 NFL draft. And we've talked about his teammate Carnell Tate there. We've talked about the Buckeyes wide receiver factory. Jeremiah Smith might be the best one yet to come, and he's sitting at a enticing plus 1,800. So that's your latest look at the current Heisman Trophy odds, okay? Coming up, we have Howard Balzer is going to join us on the C block. And one of the stories we're going to pick his brain about is this Tom Brady development yesterday. A lot to get to with that, but the NFL trying to save face, issuing a statement. And we all know that's a PR facade. But also, Brady in the news for his Saudi Arabian flag football tournament featuring NFL players. We'll talk about that more after the break with the legend himself, Howard Balzer, 50 years of covering the National Football League. So buckle up, hunker down. We'll be back right after this. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report, published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right, back at it again. All right, seeing the place to be. Ric Serritella telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin here on the All Access Football Daily Show. We're live 7 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off. I just love talking football with you at home, and I love talking football with my next guest. He is formerly of the Sporting News, Pro Football Weekly, the Sports Exchange with our good friend Frank Cooney. I see him doing some stuff over at Hall of Football now as well. Of course, a host on Sirius XM Radio, a Pro Football Hall of Fame writer, now covering the beat for the Cardinals Wire over at cardswire.com. Of course, 50 years covering the NFL and NFL draft. He's actually a pioneer and paved the way for Mel Kiper Jr., and he joins us now like he does each and every Wednesday here on the All Access Football Show. Howard Balzer dropping some H-bombs. How we doing, Howard?
I'm doing great, Glad you found that picture of you and me. I noticed it last week. Came up. It's only up there for about a second. I was trying to figure out where that photo was taken. It looked like there was mountains in the background. So
that was after the mayhem of one of the Pro Football Hall of Fame inductions, I believe. We caught up with you somewhere in front of the museum, I believe.
Whatever it was, but doing good. Here we are already. The one thing I always say about the NFL season, Rick, is that we all just can't wait for it to start. And obviously, calendar-wise, aside from games, but calendar-wise, the NFL has the shortest regular season in all of major sports, only a little over 4 months, when the other seasons drag on interminably for like 6 months. So we all wait for it to come. And I always say that once it starts and it's here, we'll be snapping our fingers in about 6 weeks and say, oh my goodness, this season's almost half over. I mean, it just flies by, just like those decades do. You mentioned your 2 decades. I'm completing my 5th decade covering pro football. And it always reminds me, I always like to repeat this, it always reminds me of the famous philosophical words of Warren Sapp, of all people, who in Canton, gosh, I don't remember how long ago this was, maybe 5-8 years ago, doing an interview with him. And he had been enshrined in the Hall of Fame about 7 years before that. And I mentioned that to him. I said, man, it just shows that time flies, doesn't it? And he leaned back and crossed his arms and he said, well, I've always said this, Howard. He said, days drag, years fly, and decades zoom. And we laughed when he said that, but then when you sit back and think of it, he said, he's absolutely 100% right. And I've mentioned that many times because those words of wisdom from Warren Sapp have always stuck with me. And it just shows. I mean, heck, your 2 decade, like I said, it's pretty amazing. But here we are talking about stuff. We don't have a lot of time to talk about the stuff we want to talk about, stuff that we want to talk about. So let's get to it.
No, I love it. And actually, I started off at the Sports Exchange with you about 20 years ago. And here we are now, still chopping it up and breaking it down. And, Howard, I got to start off
real quick. That one photo there of you holding Lindy's, I've done 33 of those. 33 years of doing Lindy's Pro Football Magazine. So there's another example. But take it away.
And I'm so grateful to be a part of that because it's one of the few, if not the last, publication still standing. When you go over to the Barnes and Nobles and bookstores, you can still get your hands on the Lindy's magazine, and Howard spearheads it all. So that's a must read publication. And one of my favorite pastimes is reading it out here on the Jersey Shore during the summer and catching up on the entire offseason. And it's funny when you put it this way because it feels like the NFL is all year round. It's just never ending. And they've done a great job with that. And I'm pretty sure I can bank on you being a football purist just like I am. And this Tom Brady rule just really annoys the heck out of me. I mean, how is this not a competitive advantage? Like, I know the NFL is trying to save face with this press release. Hey, yesterday he's allowed to sit in the coach's booth, but he's prohibited from going to the team facility for practices or production meetings. However, they fail to mention that he is allowed to take part remotely or at team hotels. Now they're going to face Brady's on the call for the Cowboys versus Bears Week 3 matchup. I mentioned this yesterday, and Las Vegas is going to play the Bears in Week 4. Like, how is this not a competitive advantage?
It's as blatant as it could be, and I'm sure there's some who say, well, it's not that big a deal and all that, but it's just the look. The look of it is just awful, and how the NFL can allow this to happen. I think that what we're going to we might not start hearing it because I think owners are going to be a little reluctant to speak out and things like that. But among themselves, and the NFL has several meetings during the year, league meetings, and they have one coming up. I'm not sure the exact date, but they have one coming up next month in October, and you can rest assured that that's going to be a topic of discussion among the owners, along with probably some owners even talking to each other now, saying, how can we let this exist where a guy who works the booth of the number one booth on Fox, and yet have him sitting in the booth and with the headsets and talking with coaches and whatever it might be, and the intel that he can learn that could potentially help his team. I mean, it's just a blatant blatant conflict of interest. And it's hard for me to believe that, and I don't know what they can do during the season now. They could always do what they want because the NFL, we know, does whatever they want and changes the rules as they go along. But I can't imagine that this situation is going to remain the same as it is now in 2026. So something will change. I guess I shouldn't say I'll be shocked if nothing does, but it seems incredible that the league is going to allow this to continue much longer.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly gives them an edge, and maybe owners have been reluctant. Like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, and maybe there's some other rules being broken by other owners, so maybe they don't want to speak up too much because then they start looking around and seeing what they're doing. But man, oh man, like, it just annoys the heck out of me because I said yesterday, here's a guy who can have his cake and eat it too. Like, we talk about, he's making calls on draft picks. He's talking to Chip Kelly 3 times a week. He's in the coach's booth. He's a broadcast announcer. And as if that wasn't enough to tick people off, now he's got, I don't know if you saw this bizarre press conference he had with the Prince of Saudi Arabia about this flag football league or flag football tournament that they're going to do in Saudi Arabia. But the NFL came out and said, according to Pro Football Talk, this is not a league initiative.
Right.
NFL teams will be on a case-by-case basis if they're going to allow players to participate in this. And every NFL contract, NFL players are prohibited from playing elsewhere, and teams can actually get a court mandate if they want to really prevent players from doing this. But Jerry Jones already is saying, hey, CeeDee Lamb, go have at it. Other teams, not so much. 49ers and Eagles said they're looking into it. PFT reached out to a handful of teams. The Jets had no comment. The Dolphins had no comment. The Bills and Browns did not respond. But, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Sauce Gardner, Myles Garrett. The Raiders have 2 players, Brock Bowers and Max Crosby, and then Tyreek Hill, as if he's not irked enough people down there in Miami. But what do you make of this Saudi Arabia flag football tournament?
I mean, it's like, who was it? Rosanna once said on Saturday Night Live, it's always something, right? Well, there's always something. And obviously that keeps us all engaged and keeps us all talking about it and all that. But something like this, that, like you said, it's one thing if the NFL was going to be behind it. And, we still have all the stuff that, everyone's wondering what's going to happen in the Olympics in a few years, because there's going to be flag football there. And are the teams going to allow their guys to play in that when that occurs right around the time of training camps and all those things? So it just makes you shake your head. It really does, Rick. And, with the whole Brady thing and all that, you mentioned the whole thing about if you're not cheating, you're not trying. But it's one thing if that's kind of, quote, in the cloak of secrecy, right? But when you're doing it right out in the open, in plain sight, it's just mind-boggling. It's almost this, if you do it in plain sight, then that's okay, right? No, it's not okay. And it'll be very interesting to see where these things go. And I mean, what else is Tom Brady going to get involved in? I mean, doesn't he have enough on his plate? Well, I guess not. Let's promote a flag football tournament in Saudi Arabia. I mean, who knows? Combined with Live Golf, right? And have a golf tournament at the same time. Who knows? Who knows where this might go?
Yeah, I think he's still trailing Giselle in the earnings category, so maybe he's trying to make up for lost time. But I remember, was it Robert Edwards, the Dolphins running back, when they had that flag football thing on the beach?
It was with the Patriots, but yeah, I think it was Robert Edwards, where it was some flag deal at the Pro Bowl, I believe. Or no, I think it was beach volleyball, I believe.
Yeah, it was something beach, flag football, beach volleyball, but it ruined his career. It was over after that.
Totally did. Totally. Now, granted, a lot of things can happen to players in different situations. We always hear these off-season injuries, and you always wonder, how did it happen? I mean, what's really interesting is, just as an aside, is the Cardinals now, I know we'll get to them in a moment, they're having all kinds of injuries at the cornerback position. But one of them is Sean Murphy-Bunting, who in the offseason, prior to the draft, hurt his knee bad enough that he's going to be out for the year, and the Cardinals put him on that reserve non-football injury list. And yet this happened months ago, and no information has come out of how it happened. Because when it's non-football injury, it means it happened away from the facility. Was it working out? Was it some accident? Who knows? We have no idea what happened that caused this season-ending injury. And so, so things can happen a lot of times, but you don't want it to be, and granted, flag foot, guys run around, sometimes they play basketball in the off season and all those things. So you'd hope that but anything can happen anywhere at any time. And the worst look for the league and a team would be that one of their guys gets injured in one of these games, and all of a sudden it threatens his availability for the regular season.
Yeah, it's a very distinct possibility, as a matter of fact. So I'll be curious to see which players are allowed, which players are not allowed. Let's talk about the QB infirmary report, because the NFL quarterbacks are going down like dominoes, from JJ McCarthy to Brock Purdy and Joe Burrow. Now Jaden Daniels is questionable all of a sudden. A lot of moving and shaking with this QB carousel in the NFL. Just goes to show, I've always believed the most important position in football is the starting quarterback, and the second most important position in football is the backup quarterback. Do you agree or disagree?
Absolutely, 100%. And what ends up happening is teams get caught in that they're paying their number one guy so much money, and then they're paying other guys on the roster, and they have to manage the cap and figure, well, how much can we pay that backup quarterback? But most of them you can get. And it's always funny, Rick, how it's gotten to the point where now if you have a backup quarterback and he's making between, let's say, $5 and $7 million a year, you're saying, oh, that's a bargain. Yeah. That's a bargain. But yeah, it's very important. And here's the Vikings that made the decision that we're going to move on from Sam Darnold because we love what we believe J.J. McCarthy can do, right? But then they virtually don't care about the backup situation until just only a few weeks ago, they signed Carson Wentz, who had done nothing football-wise in the entire offseason. And now all of a sudden he's thrust into being a starting quarterback. So do something earlier. Do something earlier. I mean, it's interesting. The Cardinals had interest a couple of years ago in Jacoby Brissett to be the backup to Kyler Murray, who was going to miss the first half of the season because of the torn ACL. They did have Colt McCoy, but McCoy had a bad elbow, and they knew that was going to be an issue all throughout the offseason. In fact, I recall even in OTAs, they would do drills. He'd take a snap and just drop back and wouldn't even throw the ball because he was on a throwing program. So they knew that they weren't protected there. And then all of a sudden, like a week or 2 weeks before the season starts, they cut Colt McCoy and signed Joshua Dobbs. And he came in and was forced to start a game within like a week and a half of being there. And so this year, the Cardinals made the smart move of signing Jacoby Brissett. So, yeah, it's an incredibly important position. And it's really amazing with the 49ers, with their injury situation. Here they thought finally after – they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo because he kept getting injured, right? Then they drafted Trey Lance, probably too early. They should have drafted Mac Jones then, most likely. But, hey, that's water under the bridge. Yeah. And so then when Garoppolo gets hurt, they play Trey Lance on 2 different occasions, and he gets hurt. And that forces him to go to Purdy, who now is hurt now. And let's recall when he got injured in the NFC Championship game, a few seasons ago, which just basically destroyed the 49ers' chances of moving on. And so, now he's not playing. Joe Burrow is now 3 major injuries in 6 seasons. And so, we'll see what Browning can do for the long haul. But you're 100% right. It's so important to have, that backup. But the real problem is if all of a sudden now that backup gets hurt, and you're really grasping straws. But they're already talking in Minnesota that the undrafted free agent this year, Max Brosmer, there's a name I'm sure all NFL fans know, right? He could be the backup quarterback this week. And who knows? He might end up playing. He might end up sooner than later, depending on how long McCarthy is out. But, you start to wonder about McCarthy. Knee injury last year, loses the whole season. High ankle sprain now, who knows how many weeks that's going to keep him out. And hey, guys get hurt in the NFL. We know it happens all the time. But if it happens to your quarterback, you're in a very difficult, obviously, situation.
Yeah, no, very valid points. And I think Minnesota may have just signed Desmond Ridder off the scrap heap. So that's what's hanging out around the league. I mean, we know who he is. Howard Balzer here, Ric Serritella, the All Access Football Show. Of course, Howard's covering the beat for the Arizona Cardinals there at cardswire.com. And we talked about it on last week's show. First two games of the season, they couldn't have drawn the straws any better between the Saints and the Panthers. Cardinals taking care of business once again. However, Carolina did sneak it in the end and make it appear to be closer than what it really was. What were your key takeaways?
Well, it didn't appear to be, because after they covered a strange onside kick that bounced off the leg of Mac Wilson Sr., their inside linebacker, who was just moving. He was just moving to try to block one of the guys who was going to try to recover the kick, and the ball bounced off his leg. The Panthers recovered, and they had the ball with with about 1:55 to go, and only down 5 points after they'd moved down the field on 3 straight drives and had three possessions, Rick, where they ran 40 plays total, 40 plays. And so it was close. It got down to the wire. And, we always hear, the thing I always love, we always hear, well, the team has to learn to finish. Well, is there a book there? I don't think there's a book on my shelf behind me, or a book in your. Is there a book where you can open it up and says, and here's how you finish? No, it's something you have to be able to do. There's no learning process to it. It's somebody making a play at the right time to help you win, or not making those bad plays that help you lose, whether it's an interception, whether it's a penalty that pushes you back on whatever. I mean, the Cardinals had at least, after they went ahead 27-3, almost halfway through the third quarter, they had numerous, plays on offense and defense where they basically could have closed out the game, and they weren't able to do that. I mean, heck, they gave up a first down on, I think it was the last touchdown drive for the Panthers, on 4th and 16. And so it was pretty wild. And so that's what they have to be able to do. But, they've won 2 close games. And, it's a broken record with me to talk about 1-score games in the NFL. Cardinals were 3-5 of them last year. Now they're 2-0. But here's an interesting point. We heard all year about the 49ers with the whole strength of schedule thing. Oh, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Well, the truth is the NFC West, the teams, most of them had one of the, quote, easier schedules. And one of the reasons was because every team in the NFC West this year has 8 games against the NFC South and the AFC South. 2 arguably of the worst divisions in the NFL. Now, there's teams that can give you a good game. It's not to denigrate them, but when you rank the divisions, those 2 are near the bottom. Well, so far in the first 2 weeks of the season, Rick, the Cardinals are 2-0, the Rams are 2-0, excuse me, and the 49ers are 1-0 against those division teams that they've played already. 5-0 combined. Seattle hasn't played one of them yet. So those are the games that, aside from division games, those will be the games how these teams do that will, at the end of the year, probably have a big role in deciding who wins the division and who might be a wild card from the division. And so, the Cardinals, they go to San Francisco this week. So, we'll see what they're able to do on the road against a team that has a lot of issues, has a lot of injuries, once again, like they had last season, but they've managed to find a way to be 2-0 also.
Well, this game has ramifications because 2-0 Cardinals, 2-0 49ers, 2 teams who failed to make the playoffs last year, now out to a fast start. And you mentioned San Francisco all banged up. Purdy's out. Jawan Jennings is injured. I think Trent Williams is nursing injuries. So in San Francisco here, do you have a feeling in terms of how this game will be decided?
Well, it'll probably be a close game. I mean, it's hard to believe that it won't be. I mean, you never know. One team turns it over a lot, or there's big explosive plays. But neither team has a lot of those guys that can make those explosive plays. Certainly, Christian McCaffrey can. There are guys on the Cardinals that can. But I would expect it to be a close game. I mean, last year, the Cardinals' road win in San Francisco was what fueled. They had gotten off to not a real great start. They went to San Francisco with a new kicker because Matt Prater had injured his knee, and they brought in Chad Ryland, who had had a poor rookie season the year before with the Patriots, and then was cut by the Patriots, at the end of training camp. And he comes in as the new kicker and kicks the winning field goal. It might have been his time expired, but it was in the last few seconds that gave the Cardinals the win over the 49ers. That was in week 5 last year. So now we're in week 3. Certainly the Cardinals have confidence that they can go in there and they'll give them a good game. I don't think there's any doubt about it, but it'll probably come down to the fourth quarter. That's what happens in the NFL. Not to dwell on those one-score games, but so far, Rick, here's a little number for you and all your listeners, the legion of listeners out there to All Access Football. 32 games played so far, obviously. 20 have been one-score games. 9 of those 20 have been decided by a field goal or fewer. And there's been another 4 games outside that 20 that were one-score games at some point in the fourth quarter, but turned out to have margins of victory of more than 1 scores. So again, that just talks about how important winning those close games is. I mean, hey, look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs entered this season having won 17 consecutive one-score games. 17. That's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. Now, here they are 0-2 in one-score games. And so that's bringing them back to the pack in the AFC West, where you have the Chargers now 2-0, the Broncos, a weird loss to the Colts. But, hey, those things happen in the NFL. But that's a very competitive division. And I think that one's not – I don't believe that one's going to be a runaway for the Chiefs. It's been a lot of years in that division.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be both in the NFC and AFC wide open. And we appreciate the insight and analysis. We have a good one tomorrow night in the NFC West with the Rams being 2-0. They'll face the Eagles. Wanted to just get a quick prediction from you on the way out the door here.
Well, I think that game's on the weekend. Is it
on the weekend? Okay. Oh, yeah, right. The Bills and Dolphins are Thursday night. We were going to talk about that, but we can only cover so much on the –
Exactly. Right now, the Dolphins have 14 players on injured reserve. I mean, no one talks about that when they talk about teams. Oh, it's the head coach. Get rid of them, fire them, whatever it might be. Second most in the league at this point. But, yeah, that Eagles-Rams matchup, I mean, heck, last year – the Rams took them down to the wire as you'll recall,
in the snow.
What's that?
In the snow.
Yeah, a cold, snowy day, and the Rams took them down to the wire. It's always interesting to me when a team wins the Super Bowl, and if they do it in convincing fashion, everybody thinks, well, all of their games were like that. Well, not so much. Not so much. And the Eagles survived that game, and obviously it catapulted them to a championship. So I think right now the Eagles are the better team, but the Rams, they just, they find ways to win. Although again, 2 of the wins are against those teams in those, not so good divisions, and they've been challenged in those games. So you have to like the Eagles. They're one of the best in the league, but we all know the old proverbial on any given Sunday, anything can happen. And certainly the Rams are capable of giving you a good game, and I'm pretty sure they will.
Yeah, the Chiefs and Eagles game was a slobber knocker last week. Wasn't pretty, and you mentioned late game lead changes. I was tuned into that Cowboys-Giants game. They had 6 fourth quarter lead changes, tied for the most in the history of the National Football League. Hey, Howard, we appreciate the time. Give the listening audience at home a little sneak peek preview what you have on tap over at cardswire.com.
Yeah, just, covering the Cardinals and getting into the whole debate, how it is when an offense is struggling a little bit, or a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. only has 5 targets in the game. Although, again, everyone forgets the target where there was a pass interference penalty that gave them 38 yards. That doesn't count officially as a target because it wasn't a play. But it was a target because they threw it to him, and they got 38 yards on it. So I'm going to be diving into that a little bit because you know how the masses are. My wife always tells me, stay off social media. Why do you read all this stuff, that get puts out there? I know one of the Dolphins players this week said, he called social media, a rat poison, infestation of rat poison. And so, but when this offense doesn't work, it's always the quarterback or the play caller, as if everyone knows on any play what the call was, what the progressions were, what they were supposed to be, how you were taken out of them because of a pass rush. All those things enter into everything that happens. But hey, if you're on social media, say the offensive coordinator should be fired.
Well, there's going to be a lot of chatter. Going to be a lot of chatter this week, and we're out of time, but I love talking football. Again, we appreciate the time. Make sure you go follow him at cardswire.com. Of course, H. Balzer over on the X platform, and always bring in the insight and analysis that you need to know. Howard, we'll do it again next week, my man.
Sounds good. H. Balzer 721. Don't forget those key numbers. That's my birthday.
H. Balzer 721. There he goes, out the door. 50 years of covering the National Football League. We're so lucky to have him each and every Wednesday here on the All Access Football Daily Show. And, man, some great information there like he always delivers. Of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. You can catch him here on Sirius XM Radio. I saw a couple articles floating around over on the Hall of Football as well. Check that out. Our good friend Frank Cooney, the mastermind behind that one. So, hey, we went overtime with Howard. We appreciate the OT segment here on this 17th edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. Hard to believe, our third week of programming. Tomorrow, I'll be flying solo. It'll be a solo affair. We'll get into the Thursday night football matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. I'll also have a prospect preview report for you on the NCAA side. There's a Rice at Charlotte game that we're going to dissect. And then Friday, our good friend Bo Marchant, who I ran into Howard at the Pro Football Hall of Fame with, of course, part of the NFL Draft Bible Familia. Check him out at collegetopro.com. He's also a scout for the Hamilton Tiger Cats and a beat reporter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He'll be joining us on a Football Friday affair, and we'll be talking everything pigskin from the NFL to the CFL to the college football. He also makes his way out to a lot of the Pitt Panther games. And then Saturday, we have the college football pregame show with Russ Landy each and every Saturday, former NFL, XFL, CFL scout. We highlight the marquee matchups in the college football landscape with an eye on the key prospects there. And then Sunday, it's the NFL Pick'em. I was on fire this week, man. I had so much coffee fueled in me. And through 2 weeks now of the NFL season, we are holding steady with a 21-11 record against the spread, everybody. So how about that? Tune in Sunday for the NFL Pick'em. Tomorrow, we'll get our NFL pick started with Thursday night football. Should be a pretty easy one to predict there, but hey, that's why they play the games. And that's why you tune in to the All Access Football Daily Show. So thanks for watching. Thanks for bringing us into your viewing monitor, wherever you're watching at home, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Hey, by the way, we're isolating all of our interviews now over on the YouTube channel. So if you tuned in late to the show or you want to catch the entire segment with Howard Balzer, we'll have that posted later up on the YouTube channel. All right, so buckle up, hunker down, enjoy the hump day. We'll be back at it again tomorrow on Thursday for the All Access Football Daily Show. For Howard Balzer and Ric Serritella, thank you so much. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And Be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody.